Welcome, everyone, to Young at Heart, session number 169. I'm Father James DeLucio with the Paulist Fathers here in the Rectory Library in New York City for nursery rhymes, stories, songs, poems, Mother Goose, Aesop's fables, Lewis Carroll, limericks, larks, and such, and other things to keep us all young at heart. This is a late night, Friday night. Young at Heart. It's 8:57 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday, September 18th. First, I must say a happy birthday to my goddaughter Edna Grace Legg, and any of you who might be celebrating a birthday today. Thank you for joining me. And as I pledged, you will hear today my contemporary version of The Three Little Pigs. And I will begin right now. Once upon a time, there was a family of pig. There was a mama pig and a papa pig and 3 young adult pigs. Now, the parents had tired of supporting their young adult sons, and they said to them one night, "Sons, it is time you go out into the world to seek your fortunes." "I guess we could do that," they said to one another. So the next morning they took their belongings and their savings, for they were rather prudent pigs, and they went out into the world to seek their fortunes. But first they convened, and they conversed, and they said, "Well, what should we do? Should we rent? Should we purchase a dwelling? Do you want to live together?" "No," they said, "we want to go our own way. For we're American pigs, and we're into liberty, independence, and individuality. Besides," they said, "what's the point of sharing a house when we can have our own?" So they went their separate ways, but not too far, so they could always visit with one another. The first pig was indeed a very fine violinist, and he said, "I want to go out on auditions, and I want to work for one of the great orchestras of the world. I don't want to put too much of my savings in a dwelling. I think just a modest, simple little thing. Ah, there's a great sale on straw. I'll make my house of straw." He was finished in a day, and he figured, "I'm not going to be home much anyway," and he went off for his auditions. The second little pig said, "I too don't want to put too much money into a dwelling. I too hope to play among the great orchestras of the world. I rival the birds in the sounds of my flute. A house of sticks should be quite sufficient for me." So he went, and he didn't even decide to go to Home Depot. He went through the woods, and he found all these twigs, for there had been quite a storm just a few weeks ago, and there were so many all around the ground. I'm a prudent little pig, and thrifty, and so he made his house of sticks. And it was sufficient, as long as the wind wouldn't blow too strongly, or there weren't any more hurricanes. And then he went out on auditions, determined to get a job as a flautist. Now, the third little pig was the most prudent of all. He was a wonderful pianist, for he practiced diligently. He said, "My piano is very expensive, and I'm really going to need a house that will keep it in tune. Plus," he said, "if I go out and audition and play on other pianos, I don't want anyone stealing mine. I'm going to take my time and build a house of brick," which he did, and it took him many months before his house was finished. While he was still working, his brothers came for a visit, and they go, "What is this? You're not even half done." He said, "Well, I want a nice strong house. I want to protect my piano." And they said, "Well, that is quite prudent. We, of course, travel with our instruments, the violin, the flute. You can't carry a piano with you. You have to play other people's pianos at your auditions. Well, so there." And he said, "Well, how are your auditions going?" And they said, well, we're finding that it's very difficult to make your way in the world and to find a fortune as a musician in these United States. And I don't know why. I suppose classical music is on the wane. But we're hardy, we're determined, and off they went. When nighttime came, it seemed they had an unsavory neighbor, as so many people often do. This neighbor happened to be a wolf, and he was quite hungry, for he had left his parents long ago and was out scavenging for himself. So he came to the house of straw, and the moon was bright. It was easy to see, and thinking, of course, he'd be a good neighbor, at least initially, he knocked on the door and said, little pig, let me come in." "Who on earth are you, calling at this time of night?" "I'm your neighbor, the wolf." "Oh, a wolf? I think you better move on, sir. Wolves and pigs do not make for good neighbors." "Let me come in," said the wolf. "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." And he began to play his fiddle. Very well, I might say. Little pig, you make such beautiful sounds with your fiddle. Let me come in and appreciate more fully the sounds that you make." Thought the little pig. A cultured wolf. He opened the door, and the wolf pounced. Thankfully, he was just out of the shower, and he was slippery and slimy, and so he escaped the wolf's claws, and he ran to the house of his brother, not too far away, the house of sticks. Of course, his brother let him in. He was, after all, his brother, and he told him the terrifying story. Not too long after, the wolf came knocking at that door. Little pigs, let me come in." Now, how did the wolf know that there were two? Because he heard a duet, flute and violin. "Not by the hair of our chinny chin chins," said the little pigs. "Well, they're big pigs. They're young adults." "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." "I don't think that will work," they said, for the flautist was pretty confident that a house of sticks would withstand the wind from a wolf. So he huffed and he puffed, and he huffed and he puffed. He huffed, he puffed. And he did. He blew the house in. Terrified, the two little pigs ran to their brother, who fortunately had just put the finishing touches on his house of bricks. They ran into the house. They locked the door, and they waited to see if the wolf would come their way. And of course he did. Little pigs, let me come in. Not by the hairs on our chinny chin chin. Won't you play for me? Definitely not, he said. You've wrecked our homes. You foolish pigs, he said. Who would make a house of straw or a house of sticks with a wolf in your neighborhood? You have a point there, they said. But now they felt safe and sound in the house of bricks. Little pigs, let me come in. Not by the hairs on our chinny chin chins. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but of course he could not blow in the house of bricks. He went away, thinking, what should he do? But then he was tired and hungry, so he went to sleep. But before he did, he howled at the moon as a reminder that those three little pigs better be cautious and on their guard. For the very next day, he came to their door in a sheepskin. Little pigs, let me come in. I'm a poor little sheep, and I've no place to hang my hat or eat. or sleep tonight, for my house was blown away by a big bad wolf." They peered through the little window that the prudent pig had placed in the door. You can't fool us with that old sheepskin," he said. "Oh, whatever do you mean, Bean?" said the wolf. "You can't fool us," they said. "Oh, but I want to hear your beautiful music." "No way, Jose," they said. So the wolf went off. And then, of course, you know the rendition when he came and invited them to go apple picking the next morning. But those three clever pigs, they went out extra early and picked all the apples that they liked, and then they went back to the house of bricks. They decided it was more prudent if they all stayed together, and the older two would make their contributions to their youngest brother as soon as they made their fortunes playing in the great concert halls of the world. Meanwhile, the wolf came back, and though he demanded entry and they would not let him in, he went up on the roof, and they heard him going pitter-patter, pitter-patter, pitter-patter. "Let us make a fire in the fireplace," said the youngest brother, "and let us put a big pot of water and let it boil. When he comes down the chimney, he'll get his comeuppance." Now, it so happened that the wolf was afraid of heights, and he really was quite skeptical about going down that chimney. He wasn't sure how long of a fall it would be. So he pondered and he delayed. He procrastinated. I think that was the best way to phrase it. He pondered and procrastinated. And therefore, the pot had plenty of time to boil. He finally got enough courage, and down he went, and of course he fell into the pot of boiling water. "Ow!" he cried, and he jumped up so high he got off the chimney, off the roof, and he ran away, and he never bothered with the three pigs again. Of course, they rejoiced, and they all played. They created a little concert, and they said, "You know what? These auditions, too much. Why don't we form our own ensemble?" And they created their own ensemble of the Three Little Pigs. And they were able to get a number of gigs, those pigs. Which, the moral of our story is, don't rely on other people hiring you when you can form your own business, because that's the American way. Hooray. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had fun recreating the Three Little Pigs for you. And as I promised, I wanted to show you my copy of the Three Little Pigs, which has long been lost and forgotten. So I made a purchase to keep myself young at heart. This was my favorite, the most read of the Three Little Pigs versions that we shared and told time and time again in my house growing up. And it is none other than the official Walt Disney version from the 1930s cartoon. It's always been my favorite. And I have a great association with this Three Little Pigs because the same version was the one I gave to my godson Vincent, and we read it to him often when he was 1, 2, and 3. But when he was 2, he was very hesitant to say the word 3. It didn't quite come naturally, but he liked the word 2. Very easy to say. Now, he knew very well that there were 3 pigs, but he called them 2 pigs. So he'd say, "Vincent, would you like a story?" And he'd go, 2 pigs, 2 pigs. I said, "Oh, Vincent, there's 3 pigs." "Yes, 2 pigs, 2 pigs." Eventually, he learned to say 3, but I always knew what he meant. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a good, restful night and a wonderful weekend. And please look at the comments, the one right under this video, because you will see a link to an even more marvelous rendition of the Three Little Pigs by a comedian who shall remain nameless until you tap that link, or if you don't have a touch screen, till you click that link and you go and listen. Now, he gives a little, his comedy routine has something about husbands and wives first. About 3 minutes worth, but it's worth it, and even that's funny. And then he goes into that how Americans have terrible vocabulary. Why can't we have the vocabulary of Shakespeare? And then he goes about giving you the Three Little Pigs in Elizabethan language. So I hope you enjoy that. And meanwhile, stay safe. Wear your masks if you go out. And happy Rosh Hashanah to those who are celebrating a brand new year. May it bring more blessings and good things to everybody. Good night.